Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a case that, even decades later, continues to completely captivate and honestly confound both investigators and the public alike. We're going back to what should have been the most joyous day of the year, Christmas 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. Picture a wealthy, seemingly picture-perfect family. You've got John and Patsy Ramsey, their 9-year-old son Burke, and their 6-year-old daughter, a child beauty pageant queen named JonBenét. In an absolute instant, their lives were shattered. The sheer volume of contradictory evidence we're going to look at today is staggering, so we're laying it all out on our investigative evidence board to understand exactly why this mystery refuses to be solved. The tension really kicks off at exactly 5:52 a.m. on December 26th. Patsy Ramsey makes this frantic, absolutely terrifying 911 call to the Boulder police. In her own words to the dispatcher, she says they have a kidnapping, a note was left, and her 6-year-old daughter is just gone. Right off the bat, this call established that this wasn't going to be a normal case. From minute one, authorities were thrown into a situation that basically defied all standard protocols and, well, basic logic. Section 1. Christmas Night 1996, A Tangled Timeline. To really grasp this case, we need to step right into those crucial early hours and treat this like an active investigation. Let's walk through this incredibly strict sequence of events. The Ramseys get back home from a friend's Christmas party at around 10 p.m. John Ramsey reports carrying a sleeping JonBenét upstairs to bed. Fast forward to 5:30 a.m. the next morning. Patsy wakes up, heads downstairs, and finds a ransom note. Just 22 minutes later, she makes that 911 call. But here's where we need to add some sensory context. Picture this. It was a freezing morning. We're talking about 9 degrees outside, and a light dusting of snow had fallen overnight. Yet, and this is a huge yet, an early arriving police officer noted there were absolutely 0 footprints in that pristine snow outside the house. Moving on to Section 2, the bizarre ransom note, a 2.5-page mystery. This piece of physical evidence, found sitting right on the back staircase, was so bizarre it completely baffled seasoned FBI investigators. Now, what's really interesting about this is the highly specific ransom demand itself. The kidnappers didn't ask for a nice, round $1 million. Nope, they asked for exactly $118,000. It's a super peculiar amount, right? Well, it turns out that number matched the exact amount of John Ramsey's recent work bonus, down to the dollar. Naturally, this immediately suggested to investigators that whoever wrote this note had intimate, inside knowledge of the Ramsey family's personal finances.
And the contents? Even stranger. The note drags on for 2.5 handwritten pages, which wildly deviates from your typical straight-to-the-point ransom demand. It uses this weird, almost movie-like phrasing. The writers claim to be from a small foreign faction, and they actually threaten John, telling him not to try to grow a brain. Later on, experts pointed out that these phrases sound eerily similar to lines from popular 90s action movies, think Ransom, Speed, and Dirty Harry. Plus, simple words like business and possession were misspelled, while a much more complex word like attaché was spelled perfectly. It really looks like someone educated trying very hard to appear uneducated.
But here is the detail that just makes no sense. The note was written using a pen and a pad of paper found right there inside the Ramsey home. Forensic experts estimate that drafting a 2.5-page letter like that would take roughly 21 minutes. So ask yourself, would an intruder, who just broke into a house with a whole family sleeping upstairs, really sit down in the kitchen for 21 minutes to draft a rambling manifesto using the mother's own pen and pad?
This brings us to Section 3, the tragic discovery, a compromised scene. We have to shift gears from the confusion of the early morning to the chaotic, tragic reality of December 26th, because what happened next forever altered the investigation.
The timeline of that morning details some, quite frankly, staggeringly poor police work. Believing it was a kidnapping, police only sealed off JonBenét's bedroom. Friends and victim advocates were allowed to just arrive and roam the house to support the family. Kitchen surfaces literally got wiped down with spray cleaner. On top of that, the basement wasn't even thoroughly searched by police initially. Finally, around 1 p.m., a detective asked John Ramsey and a friend to search the house for anything amiss. John went straight down to the basement wine cellar, discovered his daughter's deceased body, picked her up, and carried her upstairs. As understandable as that instinctual, tragic act is for a grieving father, it forever compromised the integrity of the crime scene.
Section 4, puzzling forensic evidence, the physical clues. So the crucial takeaway here is that investigators were handed a deeply contaminated scene absolutely packed with contradictory physical evidence. Let's look at those clues. Neutrally looking at the medical evidence, the cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation by strangulation, coupled with severe blunt force trauma to the head. The weapon used for strangulation was a garrote. It's a brutal, improvised slipknot device. But again, look at the materials used here. It was crafted from a piece of nylon cord and a broken paintbrush handle. And where did that paintbrush come from? It came directly from Patsy Ramsey's own art supplies, which were kept in a tote right near the crime scene down in the basement.
Okay, I invite you to put your detective hat on for a second to consider this next piece of evidence. During the autopsy, undigested pineapple was found in JonBenét's stomach, which indicates she ate it shortly before her death. Now, crime scene photos showed a bowl of pineapple with milk sitting on the kitchen table, and that bowl had the fingerprints of Patsy and 9-year-old Burke on it. Yet neither John nor Patsy remembered serving her pineapple that night. They claimed she was fast asleep when they carried her inside. So, who served the pineapple?
Let's neutrally lay out the rest of the bizarre forensic clues. Beyond the severe blunt force head trauma, there was unidentified male touch DNA found on her clothing. Down in the basement mold, investigators discovered a partial footprint from a high-tech brand boot, a brand no one in the family claimed to own. And the house itself, well, the alarm wasn't set, doors were unlocked, and a basement window was found broken and slightly open, with a suitcase positioned right beneath it.
Section 5. Intruder versus inside job. Diverging paths. This brings us to the ultimate split in the investigation. We're going to play devil's advocate for a moment, showing how the exact same evidence is interpreted in completely different ways by the two main theories that dominate this case.
On one side, we have the IDI, or intruder theory. This posits that an outside killer, perhaps a dangerous predator, entered the home, hid, and struck while the family slept. On the other side, we have the RDI, or family involvement theory. This suggests that a tragic accident happened inside the home that night, and the bizarre crime scene was essentially a staged cover-up to protect a family member. We're exploring both of these viewpoints completely impartially today, letting the sources speak for themselves.
Let's contrast the evidence. The intruder theory points strongly to the physical presence of an outsider. You've got the unidentified male touch DNA found on the victim's clothing and that mysterious high-tech boot print in the basement mold. But the family involvement theory counters with the surrounding environment. How exactly could an intruder enter and leave without leaving a single footprint in that pristine snow outside? And isn't it remarkably convenient that the house alarm just happened to be turned off that specific night?
And this brilliantly illustrates how fiercely even the medical evidence is debated. Investigators found 2 parallel red marks on JonBenét's lower back. The intruder theory argues these are perfectly spaced marks from an air taser or a stun gun used to quietly subdue her. But the family involvement theory points out that those marks perfectly match the distance between the metal pins on a piece of Burke's toy train track. That track was found right near the body, suggesting it might have been poked into her back to check if she was still alive as part of the staging.
Then you have the basement window. Proponents of the intruder theory point to that broken window with the suitcase under it as the obvious point of entry and an attempted exit. However, crime scene photos reveal a physical reality that's really hard to ignore. An undisturbed, perfectly intact spiderweb stretched across the window grate on the outside. If a grown adult squeezed through that window in the middle of winter, how on earth did that spiderweb remain perfectly intact?
A haunting paradox, the unsolved legacy. This case forces us to look at a literal mountain of clues that somehow point in completely opposite directions. Let's guide this to our conclusion and summarize the sheer impossibility of the evidence before us.
We are left highlighting the ultimate paradox of the entire case. On one hand, we see what looks like meticulous, flawless planning by a phantom professional. There's no clear, undisturbed entry point. There's DNA that to this day has never matched anyone in the national database, and an undetected exit from a house full of people. But on the exact same hand, we see staggering amateurishness. Think about it. A killer who supposedly brought no weapon or ransom note with them, choosing instead to improvise a garrote from a household paintbrush, and then sitting in the house for 21 minutes to write a rambling, misspelled note on the family's own stationery.
It's a crime that feels simultaneously like the work of an undetectable mastermind and a panicked, improvising amateur. The evidence is all there, yet it just refuses to lock together into a single, cohesive truth. So I'll leave you with this provocative final thought. Will this bizarre collision of flawless planning and staggering amateurishness keep the JonBenét Ramsey case unsolved forever? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll catch you next time.